Hello everyone, we are live again with Bootcamp 2020. Today we are going to cover AWS Lambda Edges and AWS Lambda Destination. So, Sajjad, do you want to add anything before we move forward?
Just Homa, let's start with AWS Lambda Edges.
Okay, sir. Let's start with AWS Lambda Edges. So before showing the code, let me explain you what is Lambda Edges. Lambda at Edge is a service which actually comes within CloudFront. What is CloudFront? CloudFront is CDN for us, highly distributed network of servers, which actually reduces the distance between the origin server and the user so that it performs well and reduces the latency. With that, you can serve your web content closer to the user. But with Lambda Edge, you can now perform codes as well close to your user. How can it be useful? I'll give you simple examples, and with that, you can have the idea that number of things you can do with Lambda at Edge. Let's say your user, you need some information from your user in order to decide what language you have to serve to that user. With Lambda Edge, you can get the user's information close to that, and before serving that content to your user, you can decide what language you have to provide. If your website serves some kind of local information, regional information, you can extract the information of your user and provide that particular information to your user. So now you can perform your code as well close to your user. Let me show you the Lambda code. Is my screen visible, sir? Yes, now it is. Okay. This is the code for Lambda at Edge. You can see this is initially it's just as a CloudFront distribution we have done earlier. I have a S3 bucket. Right now, this is simply a bucket. I do not have any website to deploy on it, but I will deploy in normal scenario. My website will be deployed on this S3 bucket. Then I have created a Lambda function. Now this is not a Lambda function. This is Lambda at Edge. So how I will create it? I will initiate a construct with CloudFront.experimental Edge function. And just like I've provided, just like things I used to provide in my Lambda function, I'll provide a runtime. I have enabled.
Homa, could you please improve the resolution?
Yes, sir.
A little bit more.
A bit more? Okay. Okay, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a bucket on which I will deploy my website, my function. This is CloudFront.experimental Edge function. It is not a normal function. It is my CloudFront Edge function. I will provide runtime. I have enabled tracing for X-rays, my handler function, and the code from where it will receive the code. My CloudFront distribution, it is the same as we have done earlier. The edit part here is this Edge Lambda. My functions version, this is very necessary to provide your functions version when you are using CloudFront Lambda at Edge. My event type, this is the important part. Just like a regular Lambda actually invokes on some event. If there is an event, it will trigger your Lambda. Similarly, CloudFront triggers Lambda. CloudFront actually creates 4 kind of events on which you can run your Edge Lambda. You can either use any one of these events, or you can run your function on all of these events as well. The 4 functions, so 4 events are origin request, origin response, viewer request, and viewer response. So whenever your CloudFront will receive a viewer's request, you can run your Edge Lambda. Before serving your user something, you can run this Lambda. You can trigger this Lambda before fetching the data from the origin resource and after receiving that resource. And let me show you my Lambda. Right now, my Lambda is doing nothing. It's just outputting hello world. I have actually deployed this Edge function and the normal simple plain Lambda beforehand to show you people the X-ray, where you can see the latency. I hope you can see. Maybe I need to increase this. This is my Edge Lambda, right on my left screen. You can see my invocation time is, I hope I can see. Okay. This is not visible. Yeah. You can see the difference clearly. This function, which is my edge function, actually took 14.9 millisecond, whereas my normal function took 25.6 millisecond. This difference is quite negligible right now, but this makes a huge difference when we deploy our function. And that was my Lambda edge, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Could you repeat it? I don't understand one thing.
Yes, sir.
It starts when you fire an event on the edge.
No. Yeah, when CloudFront actually fires event on the edge.
Okay, but for example, if you wanted to call it yourself and get some return data, how will you do that?
No, we can only invoke the Lambda at edge on these 4 events, not beside these.
You cannot you cannot connect it to API gateway.
I cannot run it on any other conditions, only on these 4 conditions.
So therefore, you cannot get any UI cannot get any data from Lambda Edge.
I'm not sure about how I can get any data. Maybe I can put in some kind of event and or maybe SNS or something. That is the only way I can get the data.
Okay. Zeeshan, you're breaking up. You will have to come back again. I think you have to restart your computer or something.
And there are some restrictions and limitations too on Edge Lambda. So you can always refer to the documentation. And currently it is on experimental phase. So before working on that, you definitely should go with that.
Okay. Okay.
Can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah. Yes. You were saying something about Edge.
Okay, so yeah, I was saying that basically at this moment, the current what the implementation they have is basically when a client send a request to the server, or let's say client send a request.
Zeeshan, you are again hanging up. Zeeshan, we can't hear you. Whenever I look at AWS services today, Steve Ballmer, the former CEO of Microsoft, said that they started late. And it also surprises me how the other companies gave AWS such a head start. Microsoft started their cloud business about 2 or 3 years, 4 years behind AWS.
Later.
And Microsoft did the same thing with mobile. That then when they followed Apple, I cannot understand how these big companies made some huge mistakes. This was a huge mistake. It is the entire direction. Mobile and cloud is the entire direction of computing, and they somehow messed up. And they responded in years, which is unthinkable, at least to me. It's surprising. It's surprising. They gave a head start. Azure gave a head start of 4 years, and Google even more than that. And that's why they are suffering right now. AWS is leading. And the kind of services I see AWS has built is incredible.
They have solution for almost everything.
Yes. It is surprising. Let me call Zeeshan. I think he has been cut off. I think he's restarting his computer, or he doesn't know. Let me check.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Says, yeah, you are muted.
And Zeeshan, now you are back.
Yeah, but I'm on a third backup on a mobile data. Both of the two other connection was causing the same problem. So let's see how long we can continue with this. Okay. So basically, I was saying that what Lambda Edge is the way AWS has created the Lambda Edge is you whenever clients send a request to your website or something, then that they execute the function. So you have a four states when client receive a function, your CloudFront receive a request for the website, you can execute at that time, or before sending to the original S3 bucket, so to fetch the data, the second, before returning data to the CloudFront, and before returning data to the client. So these are the four cycles. I guess they have provided the picture as well. So I'll show you that picture once I'll find it. So you can see. So these are the four states that on that can Lambda edges can be executed, and you do not control this. This is the based on states.
I can't understand the use case for this.
One of them is basically when you send a request to the CloudFront, you want to change the header, you want to change identify the language, you want to identify any other information from the client, and then send a date response based on that particular information. So instead of sending a complete website and on the client side you update something, you'll send a request. Lambda Edge will identify that this is a user coming from the European region, and then send a particular website page based on the European region. That's one of the case.
Sir, I've sent the picture.
You can show it directly if you have. You have to share your screen.
Please improve the resolution a little bit more.
Yes, yeah. Give me a second. Yeah, this is the full screen. I hope you can see, sir. Before you...
Yes.
Now, sir, you can explain.
No, please go, carry on.
Okay, you can see that we can trigger our Lambda function, our Lambda Edge function after receiving this request. This request is coming from viewer, and before sending the response to the user. Similarly, we can run this function before sending a request to the origin and after receiving the request from the origin. Only on these four conditions we can run this Lambda Edge.
Okay. Zeeshan, let's start with destination. If you don't have anything to add.
Sure. Okay, so the interesting part with Amazon is once you have a basic foundation of a service or a platform, then you can build multiple things by combining a lot of different other services. That is what AWS has done in case of Lambda Destination. Lambda Destination is nothing different but a Lambda function. But the interesting part is whenever any other service calls a Lambda function, that call will be an asynchronous call. That means that service is not expecting a response. We, in a general, create a Lambda function and send a request to the function and expecting a response. So generally, we'll be creating a website and we'll be calling API, and that API will be responded by the Lambda function. So in that case, we are expecting a response from a Lambda function. But Lambda function has been quite well adjusted in any other service, that any service wanted to do any processing, so that can call the Lambda function. So either you have a simple notification service, S3, SES, CloudFormation, Watch, Bridge. commit, config, kinesis. This is the few of them. You can see few of them, but there can be many other services that can call a Lambda function by sending in information, so that you can, let's say you are firing an event, and then in response of that event, a Lambda function will execute, and that Lambda function will do something, but you will not be expecting a response from that Lambda function. So whenever you want to call a Lambda function in an asynchronous style, that you are not expecting a response, because it will do whatever the function will have to do. In that particular case, what happened is you will not get information that if the execution was successful or not, because you are just firing an event, and then the function will execute. Either you'll
I think
either
just a second, Huma. Could you please mute your mic? There's some background noise coming. Chan, go ahead. Sorry.
okay. So in that case, what you are trying to do is basically you are firing an event. Let's say from the event bridge, you have fired an event, you have registered a record, and based on that event, a Lambda function will get executed. You are sending a notification, and based on that notification, some Lambda function gets executed. Now that's an asynchronous call. You are just sending in information, and then that Lambda function will get executed. Once that execution is done, you will not get either it's successful or not successful. So for that, what Amazon did is Amazon created a Lambda destination. It's the same Lambda, but you will just use it in a kind of a what you say, you will call it a destination by providing it as two events of success and failure, so that if that asynchronous function is executed, has been executed successfully, so it will do some action for you. Either it will call another Lambda for you, either it will call event on a event bridge or anything else. So it can do a fourth thing. Once as your asynchronous Lambda function is has executed successfully, it can call a Lambda function, it can send a request to notification service, it can send information to SQS, or it can send an event to event bridge of, or either it's failure. So even then you can send information to Lambda, SNS, or SQS, or event bridge. So now you need to understand that I have fired an event from a simple notification service, and a Lambda function gets executed. Lambda function has the execution of Lambda function is successful. Now you wanted to know that if it is successful or not. You are not expecting a direct response because it's an asynchronous. So what it will do is, on the successful execution, it will fire another event on event branch, or it will fire and it will update information in SQS, or it will fire another Lambda function. So that's the main concept of Lambda destination, that on asynchronous call of Lambda, that Lambda will either send you successful or failure information. So that's what the main idea of Lambda destination is. And the good part is any service can call Lambda function, and Lambda destination can update four services: Lambda, SNS, SQS, and Event Bridge. Okay, so to understand this, we have in our application, we have this step number 26 in our repository Lambda destination. I'll show you this, but we'll try to implement it separately. So, okay, so you can see we have a function named destination, which is saying on successful, send an event to the Lambda destination, send an event on a failure, send an event to Lambda destination, or you can send an event to Lambda or SNS or SQS. So let me do something. I have created a project, and it's an empty project. It has nothing but just a basic structure, and I have installed all the Lambda destination subscription and all those things which will be required. So first of all, what we need is we need a function. So instead of writing everything, I'll just copy something which is redundant. Let's say I wanted to call a function mean lambda we have main lambda, and we'll create a folder lambda. Inside that I'll have a file name index.ts. I'll make it index.handler. Inside the ts I'll have export start. At this moment this function is
Nishan, we again lost you. You have hung up. Today, internet is giving us a problem. Let me call him. Ishan, you are back.
okay. Okay, so where was I?
You were just
Okay.
copying the
Okay, so I just copied the function and then I created the lambda folder, and inside lambda folder I just created a simple lambda function. So it has nothing but just a basic lambda function, and I have mentioned the lambda function. So that's the lambda function we have normally seen. At this moment what I wanted to do, as I showed in the picture, that we can send in any topic or information on SNS or an event, and based on that event a lambda function gets called. So we have to create that scenario, but on because we'll not calling the SNS directly, so we have to call that SNS from our lambda function. So that will be a normal lambda function for us, and from what we'll do from this lambda function is we'll create a SNS. We'll create const topic equals to new SNS dot topic, and this comma first topic. Name it anything, right? Now on this topic, what I wanted to do is I wanted to send an information on this particular topic. So what I have to do is I have to send the resource name of this topic inside my lambda function. Okay, so I'll send this in environment variable uh, topic arn topic dot arn. Now this information will pass to that function, and we'll have this arn over here, which we can access in from the process variable. And here what I'll do is I'll call import static as AWS from AWS SDK. AWS SDK, and then I'll create const to SNS, and I have to do is I'll call topic dot publish, and then I have to pass some values. I'll show you what I have to pass. Then promise, Now I have to say message. Let's say hello world first call or anything. And the second thing is you will provide the topic ARN. So we have process.env dot the name of the ARN. At this moment, we have not done anything related to the Lambda destination. This is the normal Lambda function, which we call this Lambda function. And this Lambda function will send information or a publish message to this particular topic. That's
Zeeshan,
the normal.
could you please repeat it? Show us the previous.
Basically, sorry.
Mhm.
Basically, at this moment, we have not done anything related to the Lambda destination. We have created a normal Lambda function. And when that Lambda function will gets called, it will publish a message on that SNS, simple notification service. Now this notification service will be sending some information to somewhere. So that's how we'll progress. So at this moment,
How did you set in the topic ARN?
the topic ARN I am sending in the environment variable. So topic ARN, and then I'm sending it to the topic ARN here in the environment.
Basically, the main Lambda you are
Is firing
sending.
a topic, firing in a message.
Okay.
So we need to basically, let me just show. So in this, if you see this example, we want to set up a SNS. So that SNS can call a Lambda function. That Lambda function will be a destination Lambda. So to call an SNS, we have something instead. We can do it from the console, but that will be a manual process. So we are trying to automate that. A Lambda is calling an SNS, then SNS calling in a destination function, and then our process will move forward. Is it clear?
Up to now, what
Okay.
what I have understood is that you have created a topic and you have passed ARN of that topic to the Lambda function.
Into the Lambda.
A Lambda function fires, sends a message to that topic.
Yes. Now, once that Lambda function fires a message, this message has to this topic will receive that message and it will process it. It has to process it. So we need to add a subscription to the topic. So we need a subscription. Import static as subs from. Okay. AWS. Okay, AWS subscriptions. Okay. Now we need to subscribe. Topic dot add subscription. New subs dot. Now we have 4 type of subscription: email subscription, Lambda, or SMS. At this moment, what I want, because we wanted to learn a Lambda destination, so I'll add Lambda subscription. This Lambda subscription is expecting a Lambda function. So for that, I'm creating another Lambda function. Say my topic Lambda or anything. This will be exactly similar. I'll create a file name topic.ts and I'll provide this topic here. At this moment, we don't need environment. Now we are expecting this as a destination function. So creation of Lambda function is not different for the destination or normal. So I'll pass this over here. At this moment, it's a normal. We'll fire an event. That event will published on the topic. That topic will send that event to a subscriber. That subscriber is a Lambda function, and that Lambda function will get executed. Now, the execution of this Lambda function, the topic handler, is asynchronous. Either is successful or its failure, we do not know. Let's say inside this function, exports dot handler. just consoling. So now this function at this moment, either it will return something or it will not return something because it's an asynchronous function. Whatever we wanted to send. So this function will execute when we'll call this lambda function. This will send something to the topic. The message will be published, and this message will be interpreted by this lambda function, and this lambda function will output this. But this is an asynchronous function. We will not know that either it's a successful or a failure. So that's how you will see that just adding a two more properties, it will become a lambda function that on success. You will add a property on success, the function which you wanted to treat as a destination, as a lambda destination. And now here you wanted to add a destination. So for that, you have to import. These libraries are already been imported. So you have to import. For me, it's already imported. Okay, lambda destinations. And what I have to do is new lambda, destination. Now you have four destinations as we have seen in this picture. You can see we have a lambda, SNS, SQS, or event bridge. So first of all, we'll try to see what will happen if we send event to lambda destination. So that means we wanted to send. So our scenario is our main lambda function will publish an event on an SNS. That SNS will publish a message, and that message will be interpreted by topic lambda handler. Once this topic lambda handler is successful, so what we want is, if it's successful, either send the information to lambda, either send information to event, or anything else. So at this moment, I am sending this information to another lambda. So now we need another lambda over here. So what I'll have to do is, for easy, I'll copy it and I'll say success lambda. The folder will be same. I'll call it success lambda. I don't need anything here. This again will be a normal lambda function. So I wanted to use it for the success and failure both. Now I'll create a function name. Okay, so again, inside the success, I'll say either I wanted to return something or not. That's not important, because again, all these function will be an asynchronous function. So that's not an issue. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll pass the success lambda here, and Now you can see what will happen is imagine there is another function, lambda function, which publish data on SNS. This SNS will call lambda function. This lambda function is a destination function. Why? Because it's an asynchronous and we will not know either it's successful or failure. So what we did is on its success, we have assigned another lambda, and on its failure, we have assigned another lambda. So we are assigning a two, and so we have a four lambda. One is publishing the on the SNS, another is working as an SNS as a destination. So once that is done, either will be success will be called or a failure will be called. At this moment, we have not managed it to be called as a failure. I'll show you later once we have a picture of how things are working at this moment. Okay, so now I'll run this code so that we can see how things are going on. Meanwhile, it's uh, provisioning the database. What you can see is now you can create a complex provisioning or complex flow. From here, at this moment, we are on the success, we are sending on lambda destination. We can send on another topic SNS. That SNS can call a lambda function, and that lambda function can again go to the event, or so you can create a very complex flow by using just a destination function, and all these services are work quite well together. I'll show you once we'll see the first example, then I'll show you the other destinations as well. Okay, so we have lambda. At this moment, we have one lambda. So okay, so everything is deployed. We have four lambdas. One is success lambda, main lambda, failure lambda. So I'll call first of all main lambda, then the topic lambda, success, and failure. Failure won't do anything at this moment, but this is the our main lambda which we have created here, and index. This main lambda will publish on SNS. So we are calling this lambda function, and this is the you can see destination lambda. This destination lambda is what is saying this, it will receive something from SNS and it will send data to another lambda. So it will, this lambda function will be triggered on anything published to SNS, and it will send information to another lambda. So its destination is another lambda, and you can see it says 2 lambda. If I click it, it will show you you have 2 lambdas. On success, this lambda will get scored. On failure, this lambda will be get. Okay, now I'll create an event which will do nothing at this moment. One, I'll fire this event. Field authorization. Okay, I just forgot to give the permission to writing on the topic. As we have seen, once if one service wanted to write anything on another service, so these are main lambda wanted to write something on the topic, so we have to give permission main lambda dot add role to policy new I we need IAM new IAM dot policy statement. Inside that policy we wanted to add effect IAM dot effect dot allow actions. We wanted to send information as SNS colon static, and resources at this moment will call for the all the resources, so we do not have to specify any specific one. That's how we added the policy. And one more change I wanted to add in our normal function, either uh, um, I'm expected at this moment. What I'm trying to see if it's a success or a failure, so I wanted to manage from the input. So, and I'm expecting there'll be something inside this. So the message will be, instead of a string, it will be a JSON object. I'm expecting a property data, and I'll send either true or false in that property, just to so that we can manage the success and failure as well. Internet is being pretty bad these days now again. Okay, so our deployment is done. Let's call this function again. As I have changed the information here, that I'm expecting a event.data property, and that will be a true or false or any information I'll send. So I'll have to edit this, and I'm saying that I'm expecting a data property, and I'll send here, let's say at this moment true. Call this function. So execution is done. It's responding with hello world. So our main function is being called done. It's published data on SNS, so that must be coming here on this SNS. What we can do is we can go to monitoring and see if this function gets called or not. Not yet. Lambda destination. No. Yeah, success gets called. That means it's not showing the data, but it gets called somehow. Yeah. So monitoring is not showing. Otherwise, it should show invocation. So I just got to the log. So that function is being called. So we send information to the main. It's published the data to SNS. SNS call this main function, and we can see with this log that our main function, which is a destination function, gets called and it receives information. As I printed the log, so it received the information inside the topic, and because it's a successful, so we receive invocation in the successful function. If it was failure, then we would have received in the failure function. So we have received this function, and we can see the inside the CloudWatch. Okay, so now you can see the success lambda function executed, and it received message request payload record. We have received an object. So, and the response payload is, you can see here, response payload inside the topic success. What it is this message, the topic. We have sent this data from here. We have fired this function which publish the data to what you call it, SNS. SNS publish this data, and this SNS is listening by the lambda function, which is this one. This function done the execution, and whatever it is returning, whatever the data it is returning, will be available to the destinations inside the response payload property. So once this success gets called, we try to print this event success lambda, and we see we have information that inside the topic success. So this is the first iteration. We are publishing information on SNS. SNS is calling lambda function. That's our destination lambda. Why? Because it's an asynchronous, and we wanted to know either it's a successful or a failure. So if it's a successful, call the successful lambda. If it's a failure, call the failure. At this moment, it is successful, so it has called our successful lambda function, success lambda function. That's the first instance of understanding it and implementing it. So you are on the destination, you have add to lambda function. Now what I can do is, instead of sending data to another lambda function on the successful call, what I can do is I can send on another SNS. So let's create another topic. Const success topic. Just the name, whatever you can give a name. New SNS dot topic is common. Success topic, and again a topic require a subscription. So what I'll do is new destination, instead of mentioning dot SNS destination. Now here I wanted to specify SNS, so I'll say success topic. So this so whenever our destination function is successful, it will send a success information on an SNS. Now this again, it's a topic, and topic does not do until it has no subscription. So what we have to do is we have to do a success subscription. So what I can do is on a success topic, I'll add a subscription, and I'll say subs dot. We can add lambda. At this moment, I'll sending an email subscription. So what it will do is it will send, once our destination function is successful, it will send email to us. So let's say done. Now our main function will send information to SNS. SNS has a subscriber, which is a destination function. That destination function will get executed, and once it's done with success, it will send a message to another SNS, and that SNS will have this subscription. So one SNS can have multiple subscription. At this moment we have one. So email subscription, so I'll receive an email that our function gets executed successfully or not. Let's npm run build. Deploy. So whenever you register your function email subscription like this, what will happen is AWS send you first a confirmation email. So when this stack gets provisioned into the AWS environment, AWS will send you an email to confirm the subscription. Otherwise, you will not receive any emails. So I'll definitely, once the provision is done, we must have received email. Let's see, or I have already done this, so maybe we won't receive, but let's see. Okay, so if the provision is done, I must have received email. Yes, I have received email for confirmation. So which is 0 minute ago. So confirm the subscription. Okay, so confirmation is done. Now get back to our stack, and let's see. Okay, so I have this 4 lambda function. This is our main, success, and topic. Okay, so this is our main function. We'll receive, once we'll call this main function, it will send SMS to this destination function. So destination function is nothing but an asynchronous function which is being called by any other service which is not expecting a response from that destination function. So that's a simple lambda function and nothing else. So success main. And now you can see we have two destination, but one is SNS, another is lambda. So our success is SNS and our failure is lambda. Now what I'll do is I have already created this event, is already been created. Fire this event. Successful. It must have sent a request to this function. This function will get executed and then it will send information to SNS, and I must have received email for the yes, you can see. Now I have not manipulated the message or what it should be done, but how message should send to this. But what you can see, this the response payload data inside topic success true. So we have the our destination function is successful, and on the success it has sent me an email. So we can manage this scenario as well. So what will happen whenever you wanted to use a destination function, you wanted to know either it's a successful or failure, so you can add a destination lambda SNS, or you can add an event as well. So these are the two scenarios. Let's see third one as well, and then we can wind up. What you can do is you can add a destination of event bridge. So that means you are firing an information to an event bus. So for that, what I'll do is I'll create a bus. I need events, and I'll also need event targets. Okay, so now I have to create new event bus is comma bus name, my topic success bus, whatever name you wanted to at this moment. I'm just trying to set up a name. Okay, so the event bus is done. Now what we have to do is we have to pass this event bus here. But what will happen? The success message will go to the event bridge, but event bridge always need a rule. That rule should identified, and then based on that rule, the target of event bus receive the information. So what we have to do is we have to create a rule. Const rule equals to new event dot rule this comma event rule, and then we have to specify properties. Now this is this bit of a event bus. So we'll provide the our name variable of our event bus. It uh, coincidentally the property and the variable name is same. Otherwise, this is the variable I'm trying to specify over here. Okay. Then we have to specify the event pattern, and we have to specify the targets. So once the pattern is matched, which target you wanted to send the request. So what I wanted to do is our main function will publish an event on SNS. SNS will call a destination function. Once destination function is successful, it will send an event on an event bus. Event bus will verify the information inside the what type of pattern is information is coming in. Based on that information, event bus will send uh, to a particular target, and that particular target can be anything. uh, Again, it's an lambda, SNS, S3, or anything. So at this moment we are limiting to lambda again. So what I have to do is new targets dot mm, lambda function. Now here I will specify the success function we were using directly on the destination. I'll specify over here. Okay. Now the pattern. The pattern, what we have to understand is what we are receiving when the message or a function is a successful. So in our case, what will happen is this index will send this data to the topic. This topic will be received by this topic file, and this function is returning these two properties. One is a data and another is a success. So actually we are sending these two properties, and we need to specify either of these properties have such particular information or not inside the event. So let me what you say, let me change it to so that we can specify we are inside the topic, success dash topic, so anything. So we have a data property, and in that data property we have success topic. Now here, once this information is passed to a destination, I have showed you that we'll receive this information inside the response type. uh, so we will receive data like this. So we have a response payload. Inside that response payload we have a this property. So we need to specify in event pattern. We'll say that I'll receive a property response type, response payload, and inside that response payload, why there is an error, not assignable event pattern, and it will be the data, and that data will be, have to see the event pattern, just a moment. So we are receiving a detailed object inside the response payload, and then this, and then inside the data we are receiving a success. So if this pattern is successful, then this lambda function will get called. Okay, now will. Okay. Okay, it's done. Now let's open the main function, my topic and success. Okay, now you can see in destination we have event bridge instead of SNS. So you can on the failure you can also specify event bridge as well on the failure. Now from here what we'll do is we'll fire the event from here. It's successful. It should be coming here, and we must get called this function in the CloudWatch. Let's see. Okay, so you can see we have received the my success topic bus event from the bus as well. So what we did is we have sent request to from the main function to SNS. SNS call this destination function. If this destination function is successful, it's sending an event to the event bus, and on the event bus, if the information match this particular pattern, so because we are sending information this success topic, so it's a kind of a check that if information is coming in this style, it has a data property, it has a detail property inside that, it's a response payload property inside, it has a data property, and that data property contains success topic. So send the message to Lambda function. So it will, so you can create a very complex flow with this scenario, that if a particular for example, on the success of this on the call of this Lambda function, this can be another destination function, it has a success and failure, and the list goes on. So you can create a very complex and kind of a decoupled system which will be working in a complex environment, but everything will be a decoupled and calling it in, other things indirectly. I guess topic is quite simple, but working with all those things, it becomes complex if you try to implement. So
But the thing is now, so it shows that serverless computing is maturing, and
yes, yes,
it has taken 5 years, but it is
mm,
maturing. It is maturing, and
yes,
now we have advanced functionality coming in. And in the next class, we will cover containers, how we can add containers to functions, as act containers, Docker containers can act as Lambda functions as well. Okay, see you guys. Bye bye. See you in the next class.
okay,
Bye.
bye everyone.